Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show podcast, coming to you from right here in our quaint little studio, even more confined in just my little office. Of course, Jonathan Voico has been off this week, taking care of some sick kiddos. That's why we can't be in the main studio, because he's not here to run it. So we're doing it from my little office here, and it's worked just fine. And we are so glad you decided to join us here today as we talk about our favorite things in the world: movies, movie news, TV, streaming, all sorts of good stuff. Not just giving you our opinions, but also giving you some information and context so you guys can form your own well-informed opinions, whether they're the same or different than ours. Joining me today on this delightful Friday is the delightful Chris Carr. Chris, how you doing today?
I am doing great. Got my big cup of coffee. I'm ready to go. We got a big day.
Yeah, there is actually a lot of stuff to talk about here today, but most importantly, you guys are here joining us. Thank you so much for being here. And here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off by talking about a bunch of predetermined topics. We got like 8 topics on the docket today, guys. So we got a lot to get through before the weekend here. And then in the last part of the show, we're going to take your questions. If you guys are watching live right now and you've got a topic or a question or an observation that you'd like to make, go ahead and use the super chat feature there in the live chat. And as long as it's appropriate for us to read, we'll read it off and address that in the last part of the show. All right, guys, with all that down, we got a lot to get to here today, so let's jump right into it, shall we? We're going to start with this. Warner Brothers, of course, in the last the last year or two has been big in the news. It was acquired by AT&T, then it got sold by AT&T to Discovery. Now Discovery's running it. And of course, there's been a lot going on with Warner Brothers Discovery. They've got a new heads of DC films. They're about to start off in a whole new era, but it also looks like they might be looking to buy another major studio and maybe actually buy Paramount Studios. Now, this is coming to us from NBC, who are writing that John Malone, he's one of the senior board members of Warner Brothers Discovery, suggested that regulators may be open to media consolidation that it wouldn't typically allow if one or more of the emerging companies was facing the prospects of bankruptcy. And David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, has said that the company is looking to become an acquirer in the next 12 to 24 months, that they are positioning themselves, because we know for the last long while, David Zaslav and the folks over at Warner Brothers have been doing a lot to try to get their financial books in order, right? Doing cost cutting, a whole bunch of kind of stuff to get their books in order. And now it looks like the thing that they're looking to do is they're getting their books in order to maybe buy something big and significant, and they're suggesting it just very well may be Paramount Studios. This comes to us from the same article in NBC. While Malone, that's the board member, didn't name a specific company that they were targeting for Warner Brothers Discovery, he discussed Paramount Global as an example of a company whose prospects seem shaky. Paramount Global's market valuation has gone all the way down to just $8 billion, while carrying about $16 billion in debt. Malone noted that Paramount's debt was recently downgraded. I think that they're running probably negative free cash now, he said. Paramount Global's third quarter cash flow was $377 million, and the company's is forecast return positive cash flow in 2024. So basically, what they're saying here is that, look, Warner Brothers is saying we are looking in the next year to acquire. We're looking at adding to our overall portfolio. They're pointed out that they have spoken before about Paramount Studios. They're saying they want to get into another company that might be at risk of bankruptcy. We've been talking for a while that it does indeed look like Paramount may be a company that could be facing bankruptcy at some point here, and that Warner Brothers could be taking them over. Now, look, I actually think this would be a pretty smart move if they were to do it. We don't know for sure that they're doing this, but if it was, it would be a pretty good move, because by acquiring Paramount, you're acquiring a lot of great assets, right? Paramount Plus, which has not taken off, but I think Paramount Plus is an underperforming asset. I think it could be quite good and could be quite big, but look beyond Paramount Plus. Look at the content. They're in the Yellowstone universe, right? They've got Star Trek. They've got a whole bunch of stuff that all of a sudden would be a part of the Warner Brothers family. And as Warner Brothers is looking to continue to stock up its Max service, merging in the stuff from Paramount Plus could be very interesting. And if Paramount right now, Chris, is only being valued at like $8 billion, which admittedly is more than I have right now. But if Paramount is only being valued at $8 billion and you can acquire all the assets that they have for that, you'd be picking up a whole bunch of debt to come along with it, but they'll probably do some consolidating there. This could be a really interesting move in the next year or so. But I mean, a lot could happen. Paramount could turn things around, become really profitable between now and then. Who knows? But you hear about this. What are your first thoughts?
Well, my initial thought is I always love Paramount at CinemaCon. I always love their presentations.
Oh, they do the best.
They do the best ones, and they've believed in movie theaters for so long. So it's a little rough hearing that they're not doing as well, just because, gosh, they've believed in exhibition, they believed in movie theaters, they believed in going to see things on the big screen. So that does kind of hurt my heart a little bit. But from a business standpoint, this is a really smart thing for WB to do, because not only do they get access to that Yellowstone universe, right? It's a pretty, like, Paramount Plus is something that a lot of people are sleeping on. If you like sports, live sports, they've got late shows, they've got tons of good stuff on there. And we're talking about cinematic universes. They've got Sonic. Sonic has been a cash cow for them that was very, very underrated, that they've been able to mine that IP. They're already talking about spin-off shows, more movies, all kinds of stuff, and creating a cinematic universe around that Sega franchise. So I think it'd be really smart to get in on a low price point like this and acquire those kinds of things that already have such a fandom behind them.
All right, guys. Well, I mean, listen, there's a lot here to digest and a lot going on. There's a lot of ifs, maybes, all that kind of stuff is attached to this too. But we could be looking at the merging of two of the most long-standing traditional movie studios in Hollywood of Warner Brothers and Paramount. Will it come to fruition? We'll find out. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? The Marvels is now out in theaters, the newest installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've been following, all the stuff about the first reactions, the reviews. Now, as of this morning, the critic rating for the Marvels has climbed from 55% to 60%. So as of this morning, it's got the red tomato on it. If it drops 1%, it goes back to the green splat. But it's at 60%. And the audience rating, I was actually quite surprised to see, was up as high as 85% this morning. Now, which means a large majority of the audience has enjoyed the film. All right, I finally had a chance to go out and watch The Marvels last night without a lot of excitement. Admittedly, I was interested in it. I love Ms. Marvel, Iman Vellani, playing Kamala Khan. I love her. I liked the first Captain Marvel movie. Didn't love it, but I liked it. And I did not know what I was going to get at. I'll be honest with you. If I'm being really, really honest, I was expecting to not like it. And I did. I liked it. I didn't love it, and I certainly have some issues with it. Some of you may have seen that I put out my out of the theater reaction to it last night, and I said the following things. And this is all non-spoiler stuff you've seen in the trailers. But it has two major sequences, not just individual scenes, but two major chunks of the film that I just found very cringy. The song and dance planet, I thought was ridiculous. And there's also a scene involving a lot of cats. I won't say what, and I didn't dislike it because of the cats. You all know I don't like cats, but it wasn't because of the cats. I just found that to be kind of whatever too. Also, about halfway through the film, I realized they're just the plot of this movie is just ripping off Spaceballs. This is literally Spaceballs. Set it from suck to blow. It was Spaceballs. Now, all of that, I then said in my out of the theater reaction, I believe the movie gets saved by one of the things that most of the critics, even the ones that didn't like the film, all seem to agree on. The chemistry between the three lead characters was great. I was actually quite impressed by it. I was kind of expecting that would be the case. Again, even the critics who didn't like the movie were saying that was one of the strong points, and I agree. But one of the other things that a bunch of the critics said, I also completely agree with. Iman Vellani steals the movie. Not that there was anything wrong with the other two characters. They were fine too. They were solid, whatever. But Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel completely stole the movie. Had the most charming, most endearing, most wonderful moments. There's also a big moment at the end that I thought was stupid, but a lot of people in my audience that I saw it with were cheering and yelling, and including my wife, Ann. My wife was just filled with glee, but I'm like, oh, that's dumb, whatever. And a very fun post-credit scene. You know, Chris, a lot of people were saying that the post-credit scene in this movie is vital. It changes everything about the MCU. No, it doesn't. I'm not going to say what it is, but no, it does not. But it was very fun. Like I very much liked, I admit I very much liked the post-credit scene. There is only one, by the way, everybody. Don't stay to the end of the credits because there's nothing at the end. But there's a mid-credit scene and it was very fun, but it in no way changes everything about the MCU because it honestly doesn't do anything that other MCU movies haven't done already or cover ground. I won't say which one, but hasn't been covered in other things already. So, Chris, what I said coming out was this is the fourth movie out of the last 5 MCU movies that failed to be great. The only MCU movie in the last 5 that achieved being great, I think, was Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Agreed.
But listen, the vast majority of the people in the audience I saw it in, and by the way, it was not a sold out crowd. This movie's going to flop. But the vast majority of the crowd that I was with in there seemed to have a really good time. Ray was laughing his ass off. Anne loved it. My wife Anne loved it. I did not love it, but my wife Anne loved it. And an 85% audience rating right now, which is frankly higher than I thought it would be. So I thought it was decent. I had a decent time watching it. Anyway, Chris, you also had a chance to go see it. You and I have not talked about it.
Yeah.
What did you think about The Marvels?
You know, that 85 rating kind of sounds right for how I felt about it. I'd give it like a B-, maybe dabbling into a C. I, for the most part, enjoyed it. I'm with you on Iman. I think she absolutely steals it. I think her and her family are the heart that's needed in this. And that's where I think some of the things are missing. I wish we explored a little bit more of, Carol and Photon's backstory and history and how they were feeling about each other. I feel like we spent a lot of time on fight scenes that were really rad looking. But we could have delved into some character story here a bit more. And I know an hour and 45, that's a pretty rush time considering how long these Marvel movies are now. But I think we could have done some more things, nix that dance number, maybe tighten things up to focus on our heroes. I also got to tell you, in my review, I talked about how I couldn't tell you the villain's name. It was...
I couldn't tell you right now. I just saw the movie last night. I couldn't tell you who the villain was. Couldn't tell you her name.
I don't know. I don't know. To your point, it doesn't change everything in the universe. It's pretty cool what we see at the end there. But yeah, it's better than Ant-Man is how I felt when I left.
I 100% agree. At least it was better than Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Which isn't saying a lot.
I wanted to talk to you about this too. I don't know about this Nick Fury in this movie.
Really?
Yeah, there are some really hilarious little one-liners he does that are great. But there are a couple moments too of, is that our guy? Is that who I just saw go through, Secret Invasion? Is that?
Okay, but there's an important thing to remember because this Nick Fury in this movie feels consistent with the Nick Fury we've seen in a couple of other MCU projects. But it doesn't feel like the Nick Fury we have and we're sitting with at the end of Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
And then I remembered The Marvels was supposed to come out before Secret Invasion came out.
That's a great point. Okay.
Because I was thinking that last year. It's like, this feels like Nick Fury, but it does. But boy, he sure has pulled himself together. Had some really good online therapy because he seems like a big positive outlook on everything's positive and great. But yeah, Marvels was supposed to come out before Secret Invasion. So that made more sense. Yeah. But back again to the villain. Before the villain, can I give you my biggest complaint?
Please do.
Fuck you, Disney. Fuck you. This advertising campaign, they put out 2 trailers with the line with hearing Thanos' voice and Thanos saying, there will be someone to carry on my work. That had absolutely fucking nothing to do with this movie. That was blatant, false, misleading, deceptive, lying advertising. Like, we get, you put up a shot of Steve Rogers. Okay, that's just member berries. You put up a shot of Tony Stark, but in two separate trailers, you showed Thanos and then you played his voice going, there will always be someone to carry on my work. This had nothing to, I was expecting that this villain, that this girl was carrying around like a power stone in her hammer from another dimension, because they talked about another realities coming into ours. And so I started thinking, okay, this is like a Thanos whatever. On two separate trailers, they showed us Thanos using the same line, there will always be somebody to carry on my work, and then showing the villain of this movie. And that has absolutely buck screw nothing to do with this movie whatsoever. And while I ended up liking the film, this was Disney saying, ah, ha, 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 screw you, ha, ha, screw you, everybody. Like, so fuck you. Like, what? I'm not going to believe anything. And it's, you know, Chris, it's one thing for them to have like Avengers Infinity War and have a shot of all the Avengers together running down the thing, and that's not actually in the movie. Okay, yes, but all those characters are in the movie, and it is taking place during a battle in Wakanda. That is a scene that's in the movie and all that kind of stuff. But their whole thing of, yeah, oh, there's going to be somebody to carry on my work. It's like, that's nothing to do with this movie. And I was that
this is your
really
Anna de
pissed
Armas.
About that. Really,
this
really
is your
pissed.
Anna de Armas is not in yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. This is, not that I was expecting, don't get me wrong. Not that I was expecting, you know, Thanos to appear in the movie. I wasn't. I thought maybe a small chance we'd see him in some kind of a flashback, but that's fine if they didn't do that either. I at least expected that carrying on his work was going to be a part of the motivation of the villain and whatever. Anyway, it just really pissed me off that they did that.
I think too, it would have been more interesting than what we got with that villain, because then you see somebody who is radicalized, who understands, no, there are too many people. There are too many living people. And you cannot live well if this many people exist.
And you know what? That could have even fit in with their story with, I'm not going to give you any details, but what's going on with Kree in the movie, that actually kind of could have fit.
They could have folded that in so nicely, but instead they did what they did. And I went, oh, I mean, okay, I guess I would be mad too, but I don't see this strong correlation like the trailer suggested there could be.
Yeah. So I think both of us are on the same page. I think we liked the movie.
Yeah.
Didn't love it. I mean, it's better than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. But again, the thing I lament, Chris, is once again, it's another MCU film that is just pretty good.
It's fine.
You know, coming off of 10 years of amazing after amazing after amazing, we've now gone 4 out of the last 5 that weren't great. Some of them weren't good at all. But I mean, it's just, yeah, it is what it is. But look, would I recommend it to people? Yeah, I'd say there's fun to be had. Go see it. Just don't expect a lot out of it. And yeah, there you go. Anyway, guys, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on this. If you had a chance to go and see the Marvels, let us know down in the comments section below. Okay, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, the streaming wars going on and the prices, it seems like every week, Chris, every week there's a new story about Netflix has announced a price increase. Max has announced a price increase. Disney has announced a price increase. Paramount Plus, like price increases. And as they've started to happen, more and more people have been starting and asking about, like, could we ever see these bundle? Well, according to a new story in The Verge, Verizon is actually looking to bundle Netflix and Max together for a much lower price than you would pay to get each one of them. Again, this comes to us from The Verge, who write the following. Verizon is planning to offer its customers a discounted bundle of streaming services that includes the ad-supported tiers of both Netflix and Warner Bros. Discovery Max. The bundle will cost $10 a month instead of the roughly $17 per month you would pay for the services separately. Bundles can attract more customers to both streaming services and reduce the number of people canceling their subscriptions, churners, when they are done watching a specific show. All right, so they're talking about Verizon is looking at bundling these two things together, and it's only for the ad-supported tier. Now, if you were to have Max and Netflix's ad-supported tiers, you'd be paying roughly $17. For this, you'd only be paying $10. So you're saving almost half right there by doing that. And here's where the genius of this comes in, is not only does it cost you and I less to have those subscriptions, but we talked on this show the other day about the growing trend of churn, of people subscribing to a channel, subscribing to a streaming service, watching the show they want to watch, then canceling and waiting till the next show comes that they want to watch, right? If you have a bundle, you are less likely to cancel. Like if you have Netflix and Max, okay, maybe you're done watching your one thing on Max, but you don't want to cancel your bundle because you're still watching something on Netflix, and then later something new will come on Max and whatever. So they're making less money in that. But here's the real key thing of it, Chris. The real key thing is that it emphasizes again, these are ad-supported tiers. Netflix and Max may very well be willing to take a loss of their monthly subscription down to $10 a month for both, because you're going to get additional eyeballs on your content, which is where they're making their real money by people watching ads. This just emphasizes again that Netflix, Disney Plus, Max, they're all realizing, hey, you know what we make more money at than trying to get people to pay subscriptions? Getting them to watch ads. The only difference between this and the old system, Chris, of cable is that now not only are we watching ads, we're actually paying to still watch the individual channel. At least before, if I wanted to turn on CBS, I didn't have to pay for CBS and watch the ads. Now they've found a way to get us to pay for a subscription and watch ads, but that's where the real money comes for them. Despite that, Chris, I think this is something that's actually going to appeal to a lot of people, because at $10 a month for, say, Netflix and Max, that's less than what most people would pay for one service at all. And now you're going to get two of them, ad-supported, reduced churn. It's very similar to the cable model, but it does look like this is the way it's going. I think people are going to like it. What do you think about this?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. I like that. I woke up this morning to my email from Apple saying, "Hey, girl, your Apple Plus, that's going to go up to $9.99 in December. So strap in." So I love the idea of getting a 2-for-1. As you know, notoriously, I am incredibly cheap. I am very, very frugal, and I like to spend my money wisely. Apple's got me because I like their programming so much. But you know what? Sometimes I could maybe not take Max. I could maybe not take Netflix because I still own a lot of physical media that I go to watch on there when I'm feeling lazy, instead of popping in, a Blu-ray. If I get both together for $10, oh, I'm never canceling. I'm not going to wait around till Stranger Things is back on. I'm going to stick with it. And I think, again, with people having to pick and choose which streaming services do I have? Do I even go to the movies anymore because streamers are so expensive? Bundles are something that's going to be really, really enticing to folks, especially when you get these lower tiers that if you keep it, you keep that price locked in.
Right.
I'm sure the people who are jumping and doing the churning, it's only going to go up and up for them.
I remember back when they were first announcing ad-supported tiers, it's going to be cheaper. And listen, I admit it, I had my doubts that many people would sign up for it, because I said, once people start watching something without ads, they're not going to want to go back to watching ads. But that's been proven wrong, because the numbers keep coming out from Netflix that they've had an amazing number, like over 15 million people sign up for the ad-supported tier, whatnot. Do you think this is something that can take off for a lot of people? Because I think, my initial thing is like, well, maybe they don't want to get a bundle, but I mean, people are proving that if you can offer them something for a lower price, even if the service isn't quite as good, then they'll sign up for it. Do you think this will catch on?
I absolutely do. Again, you're weighing out cost versus inconvenience.
Mm.
And a lot of times people are either going to pay to not be inconvenienced or just accept the inconvenience. It depends on your style of spending money. So I think a lot of people, like myself, are going to go that ad tier so they can have a whole bunch of streamers and still be watching their budget. And then other folks like you, who I know
Hates ads.
will continue going for those tiers where you don't have to have your shows and movies interrupted.
I mean, let me rephrase. I don't hate ads. I just, if I have if it's all the same that I either watch ads or don't watch ads, I would rather not. And I'm willing to pay a couple of extra bucks a month to not do it. But boy, Chris, those couple of extra bucks is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as you go. And this might be the future way that streaming happens. Anyway, guys, what do you think about this? Are you interested in maybe joining a bundle situation where you can bundle in this case, Max and Netflix into 10 bucks a month? You're going to have to do ads, but does that work for you at that low price? Whatever you guys think, let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. All right, guys, with that down, let's talk about this, shall we? News has come out that A24, which is not always the best, but certainly one of the most bold and creative movie studios out there. And they've made some magnificent films. Also some that just make us scratch our head and go, what the hell is that? But A24, what the hell is that? But they've also made some absolutely phenomenally brilliant, brilliant films. Well, news has come out that they are going to do a biography movie on Elon Musk. And the person they're getting to do it is the incredible Darren Aronofsky. This comes to us from the folks over at IndieWire who write the following. Darren Aronofsky has lined up his next project, a biopic on the life of Elon Musk for A24. A representative for A24 confirmed the project to IndieWire. The film will be based on Walter Isaacson's biography of the tech mogul and SpaceX CEO, published this past September. Now, Isaacson's also wrote the 2011 biography of Steve Jobs that inspired the 2015 Oscar-nominated film directed by Danny Boyle. The Elon Musk biopic marks the Requiem for a Dream filmmaker's second homegrown project at A24 after last year's The Whale, which won Brendan Fraser an Oscar for Best Actor. All right. Love him or hate him, I don't think there's any denying that one of the most interesting figures in the world today is Elon Musk, right? Now, I've certainly got a set of opinions. On one hand, I'm actually quite a fan of a lot of the stuff that Elon Musk has done. He's been one of the forefront voices over the past decades of climate change and the need for us to convert to renewable resources, particularly solar and all that kind of stuff. He, of course, is one of the main faces of Tesla. I own 2 of his cars, like a lot of that stuff. Then there's the other Elon Musk, the stuff that he's done on Twitter that seems to have chased a lot of people away and whatever. So love him or hate him, I think you all agree that he is one of the more interesting figures of our age. And to base it on the work of the same guy who wrote the book that the Steve Jobs thing was based on, and to have it directed by Darren Aronofsky, who directed The Whale, who directed Black Swan, who directed Requiem for a Dream, who directed The Wrestler, who directed Pi. I mean, Darren Aronofsky is just like one of the best out there. He also did that film Mother, which I will confess I am not a fan of. Granted.
No, thank you.
But the number one job of the director is to, other than overseeing the whole movie, is to get the best performance out of their actors. And he took Brendan Fraser and got an Academy Award winning performance out of him. And listen, Chris, I'm not gonna lie. I find this whole idea fascinating. And I am now going to go out and get this book that they're going to base this on, because I didn't even know the book existed. I'm going to go get the book, check it out. But I'd be very curious to find out what kind of angle are they going to take on this project. Because if you only go one angle, you're going to please some people and piss a bunch off. If you take another angle only, you're going to please other people but piss the first group off. And so I'm going to be really interested to see his approach. What did you think about this? And what do you think about I mean, Darren Aronofsky doing it, and it's being done by A24. How do you see this?
I had zero interest until A24 Darren Aronofsky. That's what piqued my interest here, because Darren Aronofsky is such an incredible director, and I want to know why he's drawn to this man and this story. And I feel like he's somebody who's not going to pull his punches. I, like you, have not read the book, so I don't know what kind of angle they take on Musk. But I'm assuming this is going to be something where we explore a lot of the controversy as well as, the tech innovations and things like that. Because however you feel about Elon Musk, I mean, Tesla has been under fire for issues of racism and sexual harassment at the company as a whole. Things with Twitter, things regarding the treatment of the coronavirus. He said a lot of controversial things. That's also the problem with the internet and with Twitter, is because we all know everyone's thoughts every waking moment of the day, and we don't need to. I'm very interested to see how they go about this and explore it, and I'm hoping it is let's look at every angle so we can fully explore this person and you can decide how to feel about him.
It'll be interesting to see. Again, I don't know what kind of mindset Darren Aronofsky is going to bring to it. But again, I'm going to run out and get the book and kind of see what kind of the approach the book takes, and we'll see where that goes. All right, guys, listen. We still got a bunch of things to talk here about, including Avatar: The Last Airbender just put out a trailer that looks great. John Cena's Wile Coyote movie that he finished shooting. Yes, it's just been scrapped. We're going to talk about the Loki finale. Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts has been delayed. That stuff, and of course your questions. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second here, guys, and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends at Fume and Rocket Money. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Fume. Quitting cold turkey is great in theory, but you and I both know it's way more difficult than that. And that's why there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some fake online promises. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume. And they look at the problem in a different way. Instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavor-aired device that does just that. See, instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. I personally didn't know what to expect when I first got my Fume. I mean, I've never liked vapes, but my goodness, the taste. The first time I tried it, I was completely sold on it. It was incredible. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. You gotta try the new Solano Fume. It's made with a premium walnut barrel and an onyx-coated mouthpiece that has a slightly softer finish. Start the holidays off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/Campea and getting the journey pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 20% off until December 1st when they use my code Campea to help make starting the good habit that much easier. So start the good habit at tryfume.com/Campea to save an additional 20% off the journey pack today until December 1st and 10% off year-round. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, Rocket Money. Do you struggle to save money every month? With Rocket Money, you can quickly identify all those sneaky subscriptions that keep charging you month after month and cancel any you no longer use. For example, did you know that over 80% of people have subscriptions that they've completely forgotten about? It's too easy to subscribe to a free trial of something and then completely forget about it once you stop using it. That's why I'm such a big fan of Rocket Money. I've told you guys before that when I started using Rocket Money, I realized that I was still subscribed to a gym in another city I had moved away from 2 years ago. Also, my music service? Yeah, I found out I was still subscribed to 2 others. How much do you think you're paying a month on subscriptions? Most people think they're paying $80 a month, but they're actually paying closer to $200. That's why I use Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. With Rocket Money, you can easily cancel the ones you don't want with just the press of a button. With over 5 million users and counting, Rocket Money has helped save its customers on an average of $720 a year and $1 billion in total savings so far. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Campea. That's rocketmoney.com/Campea. rocketmoney.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Fume and Rocket Money for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's talk about this, shall we? One of the more exciting and some people are really cautious about is the upcoming Netflix live action series of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Well, a new poster for it's come out. We had some character images for it come out before, but finally Netflix has launched the first official trailer for it. And I'm going to tell you what, I thought it looked great. Now, granted, it is just a first trailer, right? So for somebody who doesn't know Avatar: The Last Airbender, you probably watched it and like, I don't really know what's going on here. And that's fine. It's just a first trailer. It's supposed to give you a little bit of taste. Really, I think this first trailer was for people who know the animated show. For people who know, to show you and get them excited. First of all, I thought the set design looked incredible. I think the costuming looks on point. I thought the casting looked good before. Now that I've actually seen it in video and in motion, I love the casting of it. I think this looked really sharp and really good. Now, again, it is just the first trailer. We're going to have to get more of it a little bit later. But I think it looked really good. Now, somebody in the live chat, just said, I think it was Isis said, it looked childish in my opinion. Bullshit.
What?
I don't think, like, listen, here's the thing though. If you watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series, I only first watched it during the pandemic. I had never watched it before the pandemic. I used the pandemic as an opportunity to kind of catch up a little bit and watch some of it. And I almost bailed on the first couple of episodes because while it was pretty good, the first couple of episodes, I think most fans even admit, it does feel a little childish. It, like, the first few episodes make it feel like, oh, this is a show that is aimed at kids. It definitely gets more mature as it goes, and I ended up really quite liking the series. I didn't like The Legend of Korra as much, but I really did like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I thought, yeah, they just captured it. And I'll be honest with you, Chris, I didn't even think that they would put Appa in it because I think that's going to look, I mean, how do you do Avatar: The Last Airbender without your flying buffalo? I don't really know, but I kind of thought maybe they wouldn't have it in there. And then of course we saw images before we knew it would, but I thought that looked great. They didn't give us a close up of his face or anything like that. I gotta tell you, for a first trailer, this has made me more excited for the film. Now I know you've probably been looking forward to this more than I have. What did you think about the first trailer?
Oh, I'm here for it. Screaming, crying, throwing up. I'm all about it. I am so excited. Seeing that sky bison, seeing Momo. I mean, I think this looks great. I do think this was a trailer for fans of the original series because it was a, hey, y'all been burned before. Everything changed when M. Night Shyamalan attacked. But this time we got you. We think we know what we're doing. And I feel so much more secure in the show. And sure, it was just a first look. Sure, it's just a teaser. But aesthetically, I really like this. I like the vibe. I like the tone. And you know, the first few episodes of Avatar are very kind of light. You get a few hints of things that are a bit more dark. And then you get hit with the heaviness of a child learning all of his people have been killed.
Yeah.
And what that show does so well is talking about the burden of war that's placed on children. It does such a good job of talking about this, of things that are so out of your control that you have to step into and try to fix, generational trauma and things like that. And you don't see that in the first few episodes. You think it's going to be a goofy show about hybrid animals and people who have superpowers, essentially. And it becomes so much more than that. So if this show can deliver an iota of what that cartoon delivered, I am here for it. And having Paul in the cast, giving us Appa. I mean, I'm so happy to see him playing Iroh. I think he's going to nail it. I think it's going to be wonderful. Same with the casting of Lord Sozin, or not Lord Sozin, excuse me, Lord Ozai.
Yeah, Fire Lord Ozai.
He looks great too and menacing. Yeah, Daniel Day Kim playing him, because that's another big role, right? Having Mark Hamill having voiced that character. I'm really excited. Everyone looks just real epic.
Yeah. Now look, we're not saying that just because this trailer looks good, this show is going to be the best show of all time. It might suck. It absolutely might suck, but we're only commenting on what we've seen so far. And what I've seen so far, as not the biggest fan in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I enjoyed the series, but I'm not like a massive, massive fan. I've liked the images. I like the poster. I love this trailer. So I got to tell you, my excitement's building for this. I'm pretty excited about it. Guys, question is for you. How did you feel about it? What are you liking what you're seeing? Are you not liking what you're seeing? Are you nervous? Are you not? Whatever you guys think, let us know. All right. With that down, guys, let's talk about this, shall we? You know, John Cena's got this Wile E. Coyote versus Acme movie coming out, a movie about that's supposed to be a CG live action hybrid. You know, kind of a little bit in the vein of Space Jam, I suppose. You know, Warner Brothers has developed a little bit of a habit, if you will, of taking films that are already finished and throwing them away like they did with Batgirl. Now, throwing away Batgirl was the right move because everything I've heard and talked to personally, that movie was an absolute horrible dumpster fire and they needed to just drop it. But it looks like maybe it's happened again, as reports are coming out that Warner Brothers has made the decision that they're not going to release this Wile E. Coyote versus Acme movie. Let's go over to the Hollywood Reporter and take in what they're saying here, because there's a whole bunch here to unpack. All right, a whole bunch to unpack. So we get into it. It says this. A little over a year after the shelving of Batgirl sent shockwaves throughout Hollywood, Warner Brothers is putting another of its films in the studio vault. Warner's no longer plans to release Coyote vs. Acme, a live-action CG animation hybrid that completed principal photography last year in New Mexico. The move follows veteran animation executive Bill, I'm not going to pronounce his name right, Damashki, taking over Warner Animation Group earlier this year. So a new boss comes in, decides, no, we're not going to do this project. Then, you know, the director of the film talked about how passionate he was about the film and he's sad that it's gone. Anyway, the feature, which sources believe cost around $72 million to make, had key Warner talent involved in front of the camera and behind the camera. It stars John Cena, who starred in Max's popular DC show Peacemaker and is due to return for a second season. And DC Studios co-head James Gunn produced this movie and worked on the story. Warner's is intent on staying in the business with filmmaker Green, is developing another project for Green to come in and direct. And yeah, it just goes on to talk about a lot of stuff. Now, there are a couple of things to mention here about the Cena situation, okay? The first thing is that while principal photography may have been done, that doesn't mean the movie was done. Because remember, this movie was going to be a CG live action hybrid. So just because they finished principal photography, that means they finished all the live action shooting. Like all that stuff was done. But it sounds like they still had a lot of the heavy lifting to do, putting in the CG elements, the characters, all that kind of stuff. Not to mention, you know, if you're going to put it out theatrically, and this movie was made with the intention of going straight to streaming. And we all know that Warner Brothers is getting out of the business of making movies that are just meant to go straight to streaming. So this was originally go straight to streaming. So they only want to do theatrical now. To do this thing theatrically, they probably are going to have to pour more money into the CGI. A lot of the CGI they hadn't even done yet. Then you're going to have to mount probably a $50 million marketing campaign to get it out. And $50 million's modest. A $50 million marketing campaign for a film of that size is modest. So you're probably looking at spending another $25 to $30 million on the CGI, probably another $40, $45, $50 million on the marketing. And the new boss who took over Warner Animation, I guess, just stepped in and said, this doesn't fit with the way we're going and the direction that we're heading. And it's going to be better for us financially just to shelve the project. Now, Chris, I'm okay with these decisions. Like we heard recently, like Disney made the decision to cut a couple of shows that they had already produced. The Batgirl situation happened. I mean, as long as everybody involved who showed up to work and put in work, as long as those people got paid, that's fine. Like I'm fine with that. It sucks because I'm not going to lie to you, Chris. I was interested in seeing John Cena doing battle with Wile E. Coyote. I'm not going to lie. I was curious about this movie. They've decided it doesn't fit their plans. They're pulling the plug. And I guess Warner Brothers needs to save that money to get ready to buy Paramount. I mean, I don't know if that has something to do with it, but you heard about this. First thought is, here we go again. But what did you think about this news?
It's one of those things where I keep scratching my head at, why are you spending so much money on the straight to streaming? Because of
Yeah.
course, if you're not going to recoup costs and you're trying to do that right now, you are going to just go ahead and pull the plug so you can save that 50 million for advertising and whatever else you need to spend on post-production, getting that CGI up to snuff. But I mean, Batgirl was 90, Scoob was, I think 40, which not a huge budget, honestly. But still, spending all this money on straight to streaming things confuses me. I understand the decision. I am a little bummed out because this is actually a really weird story to do too. The whole Wiley versus Acme, it's based on a 1990 New Yorker article.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in this story, you can read that article for free online and see what this was kind of going to be about. I think that John Cena handles comedy so well. He's so willing to be the fool in moments and play things so sincerely, excuse me. So I am sad to see it go, but I feel like moving forward, Warner Brothers just really needs to think about what they're spending, how they're spending it. We've seen time and time again that the hybrid release of things is better for things anyway. So start thinking about things you can release on your streaming service as well as in theaters, or slash these budgets and make these like Hallmark movie level budgets that you're putting on your streaming service directly, because you can't recoup that cost. You just can't.
You know, it's something that needs to be pointed out. Like somebody was asking in live chat, why would you greenlight this thing if you're only going to axe it? They didn't actually greenlight it. This was a project that got greenlit while it was still under the AT&T ownership. And they went, and I look, at the end of the day, I guess their just belief is when you look at it, however much money they were going to need to put into finishing the film, plus whatever money they needed to put in to market the film, they didn't feel they were going to make that money back. Like, forget the production cost. They felt that if we put this in theaters, it's not going to make back the money that we're going to have to put in to get it in theaters. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But it sounds like, but you can't, listen, I agreed with their decision to scrap Batgirl. That was 100% the right decision. There may be some logic behind this one, but they better not make this a long-term ongoing habit, because that's not how you build a good business. It's by like constantly greenlighting projects, spending tens and tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars on them, and then scrapping them later. There might be a call for it here and there, but they better not make this a general practice they have moving forward. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? I don't know if you guys know, but there's been this little Loki series that has been on. Another bullshit 6-episode run, whatever, for a season of Loki that I think has been significantly better than season 1. Because Loki is one of my favorite characters in the MCU. I didn't love season 1. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love season 1. I think this season has been better in almost every single way, and I've been really enjoying it. And last night, the finale of Loki season 1 came out, and I do not feel like they completely stuck the landing. But let me start by telling you what I really loved about it. And then I'll tell you the part I kind of had a problem with. The part I loved about it was, and by the way, this episode came out prime time yesterday, so I may drop spoilers here, okay? The show dropped yesterday. So if you have not watched Loki and you're interested in it, then it's on you to avoid spoilers. I'm letting you know that right up front, okay? So I'm going to talk about a couple things that did happen in last night's episode. I'm giving you fair warning. Okay. So the thing that I desperately loved about the finale and really how it connects to the whole season of Loki is this entire season, you realize by the end, was about the character journey of Loki fulfilling his glorious purpose. I mean, that's really what it was. I hate it when we get into a TV show and the hero in episode 1 is still exactly the same as the way he or she was by the time you get to the end. There was no development. There was no journey for them. Loki completes his journey, his character rehabilitation, his redemption, if you will, through not just this season, but seasons 1 and 2. And by the time you get to those final shots of season 2 in last night's episode, you've seen now the completion of that redemption arc. Not just redemption, like right from the very first time we meet him in the first Thor movie to this point here, this character journey he's been on. And you realize this entire season hasn't been about much, but it has been about that. And we come to the completion of one of the best character arcs that the MCU's ever done. I still think Wanda, Scarlet Witch, might be the best character arc we've had in the MCU, but I think Loki is right in that discussion now with the way that thing worked. But by the end of it, Loki, who was initially looking for a throne to rule, he ends up taking a throne to sacrifice. He takes a throne in service of everybody else. He sacrifices himself in many ways for the betterment of everybody. There was a bit of that redemption arc when he's willing to sacrifice himself to try to save Thor. Like that was a big step forward in his redemption arc. But coming to the end of it and realizing my entire point of existence, I'm going to use to save everybody else. And that last shot when he's sitting in basically the Norse version of the tree. I never pronounced the name of the tree right, so I'm not even going to try to bother now. As he's sitting on that throne in his glorious purpose, I was very moved. And I thought it was, again, yeah, NB in the live chat just put it really, really well. I want to see if I can bring that up. Not that one. It's a lonely throne. It's a lonely throne that we see him sitting in at the end. And I remember watching that and just feeling moved. Again, I'm trying to come up with another word for moved, but I was emotionally moved by it. And Loki, re-cementing the fact that Loki is absolutely one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Okay. Now, with that being said, let me throw this out there and get it out of the way. Now, listen, I'm not like other YouTubers, okay? I'm not going to say the things that'll make me popular with my audience. I'm not going to say things to make people like me. I'm going to say what I honestly think, okay? Because that's why you guys come to my channel, to hear what I honestly think. So I'm not going to hide this from you. I'm going to tell you the part that I really had a problem with, okay? That did not ruin it, didn't ruin it. It just kept it from being like really supremely brilliant. So here's the thing. I love whodunit movies, Chris. I don't know if you're into whodunit movies. I love mystery whodunit movies. And what I really love is when you get to the end of the mystery whodunit and then they make the reveal and you're like, oh yeah. And you go back over the movie in your head. You know what I'm talking about? And you're like, oh yeah, that clue was there. And that clue was there. And like, maybe you didn't figure it out, but you realize, oh, I could have figured it out because all of it was there. What I hate is in these mystery movies is when they get to the end and they pull out a big piece, a big clue or a big piece of evidence that was never revealed to the audience. So they do this reveal and you realize there is no way the audience could have figured this out, because the audience was not in possession of this big piece of evidence or this big clue. And you realize I just spent the last 2 hours or 2 months, if it was a TV show, trying to figure out who did it when it was pointless, because I never would have, because they hid all that stuff from me. Okay. The reason I say that, Chris, is because in the finale of Loki, as he decides he's going to go out and, do all this stuff, number one, never in the show was it even remotely given clues or whatever that this was something that was even a possibility that he could do. Number two, Loki all of a sudden, out of nowhere, exhibits a level of power that Loki has never had in the MCU. Loki got stabbed and died in Thor 2. At the beginning in Infinity War, he just had his neck squeezed and he died in Infinity War. He had Hulk pick him up and just slam him around and beat him up. Like, I love Loki, but he has never been shown to have the kind of power that he could, number one, walk out onto that bridge and not be torn to pieces like everybody else, because one of his variants got torn into spaghetti when the Nothing came. There's a little bit of, if you guys know that reference, I'm very proud of you. But when the Nothing came, I mean, Sylvie she's a variant of Loki. She got split in all spaghetti. So nothing in the MCU had ever suggested that Loki had that kind of power, and that since when were the time streams literally physical things you could just hold on to and grab? And then,
comics.
As the time streams are dying, right, he has this power that he can infuse life back into the time streams of all reality. Because at the end, he's sitting on his throne. He has to, because remember, he holds it, he instills life back into the timeline. As soon as he lets go of it, the timeline, whatever timeline he's holding, starts to die again, right? And at the end, he's literally holding on to all the timelines, all the multiverse. And he is the power source himself. The guy who just got a little stabby in Thor 2 and dies, that guy, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, is so powerful that his very being is breathing life into the entire multiverse. That's never been something that anything in the MCU, let alone this show, has ever remotely suggested that Loki comes anywhere close being able to do. And then all of a sudden at the end, I will be the source of life to all of reality. I will be God. And you can say, well, Loki is a god. That's a semantic that they use in the MCU. But I mean, so look, overall, I really enjoyed this season of Loki, because the most important thing to me is the character journey and the character arc. And it was chef's kiss. I almost said French kiss. Chef's kiss. It was French kiss. It was one of the best.
Tom Hiddleston gave everybody tongue.
Yeah, it's all of it. But I mean, it is honestly one of the best character journeys the MCU has ever done. And so it really peeved me at the end, because that's a pet peeve of mine going all the way back to mystery movies, that they pull something out at the end out of their ass that has never been a part of the MCU. But that aside, it was a great, satisfying character arc for Loki. And maybe the end for Loki. I mean, maybe we see him pop up again in Secret Wars or not, but that might now be his place forever. He's the one holding the multiverse together. Maybe we'll meet him again once they end the multiverse, but I don't know. Anyway, Chris, you had a chance to watch the finale. What did you think about it?
I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. I thought it was beautifully done. I thought it was such a good story for Loki. And, I'm going to disagree a little bit, because I give comics a lot of leeway too on how they get from point A to point B. He had the time slipping. He had centuries of getting to know about how all these different things worked. But also, because this tied into the idea we got in Agent Loki back in 2015 of him becoming, major spoilers, y'all, the god of stories.
Right.
Because so much of this was all about how Loki couldn't rewrite his story, but God damn it, he was gonna. He was absolutely going to change how he was perceived, who he was. So, what is rewriting your own story, if not a trick? And to have the trickster god go from being that to the god of stories, I think is beautiful. And then to bring in so much Norse mythology, to have the world tree. Oh, I just thought it was really stunning. And also, it does a beautiful job setting us up for Secret War, because that's one of the things that led us into that updated Secret War comic storyline, was Loki being this kind of timekeeper. So this also makes me really excited about how we're going to conclude the multiverse. It leads us to a really interesting place potentially with Loki literally pulling these strings, not pruning the branches anymore, but allowing them to flourish as needed. So I'm interested to see where they take things, and I'm really interested to see what they do with the Kang of it all, because that's still up in the air.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the whole purpose of the TVA is shifted by the end and what they're doing. Again, I don't disagree that what they did was poetic and beautiful. He's now at the center of the Norse tree. He's supplied. But again, my issue is never, ever, ever in the MCU did they ever remotely even imply that Loki has the power, like he's so, like beyond Odin level. He is so powerful that he himself individually can literally feed life, not into all of our reality, but the entire multiverse. When everybody else who is walking into that like platform gets torn into spaghetti, even his own variants. And so while I like what they did, from a storytelling point of view, you should have been laying groundwork to imply that, I mean, I get it. He spent a century studying physics. Okay, but that's not giving him God power, like literal God power. This guy who they've always shown as the most frail of the gods, who can be easily beaten by a lot of different people, they just never once suggested or hint or remotely said, he literally is 10 times more powerful than Odin. A guy who has the power to breathe life into all of reality should have been able to take out Thanos like that. No pun intended with the snap. Again, I love what they did. The poetic of it, he's now the god of the multiverse. He's the god of stories now. I love all that. I just wish they had earned it by actually laying foundation in the story that even remotely hinted that he had in him that kind of power, because a frost giant doesn't have that kind of power. And I wish they had given us some kind of inclination that they did, unless you saw it at some point in the story that I didn't, because sometimes I miss it.
Did you see how big his horns got? His horns got huge.
Horns
That's where you
so
keep your power. That's where you keep your power.
And that wasn't even an innuendo. His horns were so big that he was able to do that. Again, I'm talking about a very long-running pet peeve I have about endings of stories. But take that part out of it, Loki becomes even more enshrined as one of my favorite MCU. I still think Steve Rogers is my all-time favorite MCU character. But Thor has been number 2 and Loki's been number 3. I think Loki, as a result of season 2, is now my second favorite MCU character. I think I like him and find him more interesting now than even Thor. And the only thing I lament is that I wonder if this ending precludes us ever from having that Thor and Loki reunion, because he's got to be there on that throne. Maybe Secret Wars changed that up. Do you think we're going to see Loki and Thor come back together again at some point?
I think we do. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago on the show of how that's what Marvel wants for these two, is to reunite them and have them have that lovely brother bonding moment again, especially since Thor thinks he's lost all of his family. I think it'd be really lovely, and I think it'd be beautiful for him to see how far his brother has come.
I hope so. I would love to see that. All right, guys. With that down, this has been a long show today already, but let's move on to this, shall we? You know, we talked yesterday about the notion that Deadpool 3 may actually take over Captain America 4's release date spot in July. Now, Deadpool 3 was originally supposed to come out in May of 2024. We knew it was going to get delayed because of the actor strike, but I got quite excited that it may only go back just a couple of months to July. Well, that part of the report was true. But there was another part of the report that Captain America 4 may take, because it was much further along in being finished, it was going to move up a couple of months and take Deadpool's spot. Well, according to reports now coming out from the big trades, Captain America 4 not only isn't moving up to May, it's getting pushed out of the year and is being pushed all the way back to 2025. This comes from some folks over at The Wrap who wrote this. Disney has announced a major date shift in its 2024 schedule, with one big Marvel Cinematic Universe movie taking another's place as movies get bumped to later dates. Deadpool 3 has moved, it's official now, to July 6th. So Deadpool 3 is coming out in July 2024 from May 3rd of 2024, while Captain America Brave New World moves from its Independence Day opening of July 6th, 2024 to February 14th of 2025, the studio announced on Thursday. Now, by the way, there are a couple of other things, including the fact that Blade, it got delayed again. Blade, which was going to come out on February 14th of 2025, has just moved like another 8 months and is now going to come out November 7th, 2025, nearly 2026. So if you think you've waited a long time for Blade, you ain't seen nothing yet. We got more to go. But more significantly is we also found out about Thunderbolts. And Thunderbolts, which was supposed to come out in next year, in around Christmas time, has been pushed a half year further into July 25th of 2025. So both the Thunderbolts, which had already begun production, and Captain America 5, which was damn near finished, nearly done, they decided to move both of these films out into 2025. And Chris, here's an interesting thing about that. That means now that Deadpool is the only MCU movie coming out in 2024. It's it. With Thunderbolts and Captain America moving, the only MCU movie coming out in 2024 is going to be Deadpool. And that now means, I believe, we have 4 MCU movies coming out in 2025. Now, of course, Deadpool will be joined by a couple of Disney Plus series, but people have been saying maybe we need a little bit of a break from the MCU. It looks that we may get it. Anyway, Chris, you hear about these date moves. What do you make of this? Especially since I really thought they were going to move up the release date of Captain America Brave New World. What do you think about this?
It's a little odd, honestly. I do know we've talked so much about this, and we've got people at Disney who have told us too that they are scaling back. You know, we had that original, there's not going to be a moment where there's no new superhero Marvel content out there. And we've realized that's maybe not the best thing. When we're saturated with content, it doesn't mean we always get the best stuff. That being said, what a big shift to then go to only one theatrically released film from Marvel. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I feel like we're going to get something else that's going to go, hey, just kidding. We're bringing this out around December or something else, putting something else in those slots, because otherwise a handful of TV shows and one movie, that could be the palate cleanser people need. I know we keep talking about, is there or isn't there comic book fatigue? What there definitely is mediocrity fatigue. And at least we can get things really up to snuff. But again, I just don't think we're going to have only one movie after the kind of slate they have been doing. That doesn't seem to make sense, at least dollars wise.
But I mean, what else can they put out? I mean, you had Captain America that was going to be ready to go. Thunderbolts could have been ready to go, but we're almost, we're getting to 2024 now. What else can they do? I mean, it's not like they're going to have Fantastic Four ready to go and come out in 2024. I mean, obviously they haven't even announced the cast yet, let alone started production on that. Obviously we're not going to get another Spider-Man movie go into production and be ready to come out before 2024. They're not going to move the Avengers movies up unless, like, the only way I can see another movie coming out in 2024 is if they have secretly been working on a movie that none of us know about, Shang-Chi 2 or something of that ilk. But
wouldn't that be magical? I would love if we were getting a Shang-Chi 2. God.
Well, not only would I love that, how magical would it be if they actually were to announce, oh, by the way, guys, a trailer dropped tomorrow. In 3 months, Shang-Chi 2 comes out. But unfortunately, we live in a world now where every single human being walks around with a global audio-visual communication device in their pocket, and we have social media, and you just can't keep that stuff secret. I mean, they can't even keep one person's involvement in a movie secret anymore.
We know about Shrek 5,
Oh, yeah, like Shrek 5. But again, that's coming in 2025. So that's still a ways off. So, I mean, but I agree with you. See, that's why I'm a little bit shocked here, because I have a hard time believing that they're going to have an entire year where they have just one film. But as I look at the potential slate, I don't see what else they could possibly have ready for 2024 other than films that they've just announced they're moving out. Yeah. So unless they change their mind and decide, you know what, we're kidding, Captain America, Brave New World, September of 2024 or something along those lines. But I just don't see what else they could have come out unless, Chris, I don't know how far on left field this is. They decide to take a Disney Plus show, edit it down and release it as a feature film. But even then, I mean, Daredevil? But I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, honestly, because we've talked about this with Obi-Wan and some of the other Star Wars things.
Yes, they should have done that with Star Wars.
Yeah. When you're giving us 6 episodes of something, it is that weird kind of, you should have made this a 2.5-hour movie or a 12-episode show. Somewhere in between didn't work. So I could see them doing something like that. Like if they made Agatha an actual movie that came out around Halloween.
Oh,
that could be pretty fun. I don't know if that's the kind of thing that you want to have on the big screen, but I mean, I think it could be really, really cool. I'm just trying to figure out why they're leaving money on the floor. I know they have so much to do. I know they have to compensate for the strikes, reshoots, all this other stuff, but it feels so weird.
By the way, Southtown Paint Apps says, what about Armor Wars? I mean, Armor Wars is a good idea. The problem with Armor Wars is that they haven't started making that. So you're talking again about a project that you'd have to go into production and start and finish and then do post-production and have it ready to come out by 2024. And I'm not really sure they're going to be able to do that. So yeah. And you know what? I'm really bummed out too about Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
I went from being completely not interested in Thunderbolts, and then they announced the actual lineup for Thunderbolts, the character lineup. And all of a sudden I was like, yeah, what's David Harbour's character's name again? Red Guardian?
Red Guardian.
Like you just Red Guardian by himself, who was the single best thing about the Black Widow movie. Just Red Guardian himself, and having Elaine in it, and Winter Soldier, and Walmart Captain America. And, you know, I suddenly became very fascinated by this movie. And I'm not going to lie, I'm also kind of bummed out that it looks like we're going to have to wait until 2025 for that thing to come out too. All right, guys. With that down, we're now going to move over and start taking your live questions that you guys have been firing in. But before we do, we're going to take a second here and say goodbye to Chris Carr. Chris, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a great weekend. And where can people follow you online?
Thank you. I hope you have a great weekend too. You can follow me at It's Chris Carr on Instagram. I just posted about a new podcast on there today. And then you can find my voiceover studio, Speak Friends Studio, on Instagram and online.
Thanks a lot for being here today, Chris, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Now, guys, before we get to your questions, we're going to take another second here and thank another sponsor of the show, the main sponsor, actually, of the John Campea Show YouTube channel, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are planned and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, it's now time for us to go over and start taking your questions. I'm going to let you guys know that because I'm running the show by myself and normally have Jonathan Voico helping, I really should have kept my eyes on the super chats because I should have turned them off a lot sooner than I did. So we have a lot of I've now turned them off, but we have a lot of super chats that have come in. I'm going to get through these. I'm going to get through them all, but I might have to move a little bit quicker than I normally do because I want to get through all the super chats that you guys have sent in. All right. All right. Let's jump over to it here. And we're going to start off here with James Germain, who writes, "Hey, John, Loki has the most badass character arc in all of the MCU. I still don't think as good as Wanda's, but right up there. And when Thor and him reunite, chills, tears, keep it filthy." Here's the only problem with that, James. The only problem, because I agree. I do agree. The one problem with what you and I are thinking, though, is that he's already died and been reunited with Thor twice, right? Because Thor thought he died at the end of Thor 1, and then Thor thought he died at the end of Thor 2, and now he thought he died again with the breaking. I mean, they've already done it a couple of times. So yes, I am very much looking forward to seeing them reunited again, but this will be the third time that Loki and Thor reunite after Thor thought Loki was dead. So, I mean, that's the MCU for you. Okay, let's see. Next up, we've got Raymond Verrata, who writes, "Wow, I didn't know there was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer until I saw the Marvels at the epilogue cameo. I wanted to shout, bro." Yeah, they dropped the new trailer for the new Ghostbusters online before it came out with the Marvels, and then they played it in front of the Marvels. Listen, I'm very excited about this movie. I loved the first one they did the other 2 years ago. I loved it. I cannot wait for this new one. I didn't think this new trailer was all that great, but it's just a first trailer. I don't really care. I'm super excited about the movie either way, so I can't wait to see it. Okay, next up, Daldar, the Glorious writes, "I saw the Marvels. Let me try that again. I saw the Marvels yesterday and I liked it. Iman was the standout, but everything felt rushed and it had the weakest villain since Thor 2, but I enjoyed it." It absolutely had the weakest villain since Thor 2. I completely agree. And I'm going to say something that I have not said in a long time. Normally I come out of these movies and I'm like, you know what? It could have been a little bit shorter. And I love the idea that it was an hour and 45. I like that. But this particular movie felt like it should have been a little bit longer because too many things happen in the movie that just feel like they just happened rather than had a little bit of setup, a little bit of room to breathe. Like the whole Monica and Carol relationship should have been given a little bit more room to breathe. I think this is one of these movies that could have stood being a little bit longer. And I know I don't often say that, but I think it could have stood being a little bit longer. All right, next up, we've got Rafael Castillo sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Rafael, for supporting us on that level, who writes, "I watched the documentary Sly." Oh, I really want to watch that. And I loved it. Quite inspiring and informative. I've been a Stallone fan since Rocky made me feel like my own hero. I came out of the theater way back then walking 2 feet above Times Square. Listen, I think when we look back, and again, Rafael, thank you for supporting us on that level. Sylvester Stallone's story is really an incredible one. When you look and actually go and look at the story of what he had to go through to even get the first Rocky movie made, and then how his career, how he has steered his own ship, really, it is really an inspiring story. And that's why I've been really excited to watch this documentary. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I've been watching Blue Eye Samurai. God, that show's so good. And guys, watch Blue Eye Samurai. And but I want to get around to watching Sly. I'm very excited to watch it. All right, next up. Big Cookie writes, "Inside Out 2, horny emotion, excitement, arousal's not a bad one." What was the other one? Somebody else, because we were talking yesterday about you couldn't name an emotion horny, but what could you call them? And somebody wrote in yesterday, desire. Desire wouldn't be a bad name. Yeah, that's it. Shio is saying desire. Desire wouldn't be a bad name. Arousal, I think you can get away with arousal. Like you can't have an emotion called horny in a Pixar animated show, but desire or arousal, I think those ones would work. All right, next up, Daldar the Glorious writes, with MCU movies being delayed, could this be Feige starting to restructure after getting his power back to make sure they're good and get the MCU back on track? Maybe. I mean, that is a possibility. That, listen, a lot of us have been theorizing that they might want to course correct a little bit with this whole multiverse saga they're doing. So maybe they take this time to make some slight story narrative changes to change the destination of where they're going. I'm not sold on that, but I don't believe it's a ridiculous theory. I think it's something that it could very well be what it is they're doing. All right. Next up, Bit Ferret sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Bit Ferret. And he writes, I saw The Marvels with my daughter and we really enjoyed it. Have you all seen it? If so, what did you think? Well, obviously I've already said what I think. I like the movie. I enjoyed it. It's not great. I think this movie could have been better. Terrible villain that made no sense whatsoever. Stolen plot from Spaceballs. But the chemistry between the characters and Amal Vellani, and I got to admit, man, listen, the theater I was in laughed a lot. There was a lot of laughing in my theater for the right reasons. And again, Amal Vellani and her family in the movie were incredibly charming. So yeah, at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. Again, like I said earlier, it's the 4th out of the last 5 MCU films that have failed to be great. And normally, back in the day, 4 out of every 5 were great. And now 1 out of the last 5 has truly been great. And that was Guardians 3. You know, they're Thor, Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and now The Marvels. I just love to see a couple of great ones back to back. But again, overall, in a thumbs up or a thumbs down world, I'm with most people. I give it a thumbs up. All right. Thanks for that, man. Next up, we got Sonar D, who writes, gotta say, Loki season 2 and Gen V completely swapped podiums for me from episode 1 to finale. How do you feel the two compared? I'm shocked how great Loki was. Gen V started strong, but Loki took the trophy in my opinion. I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, they are two very, very different shows, and I loved both of them. Like, I really enjoyed Loki, really enjoyed Gen V. I thought they were both great. I loved, for almost a month, we got to, on Thursday nights, watch an episode of Gen V and an episode of Loki on the same night. It was a great back-to-back. Now, they are two very different shows. Two incredibly different styles of shows and kinds of shows and what they're trying to achieve. Again, for me, I just really wish they stuck the landing better with logic. You know, Loki, again, has never been that powerful of a character. And I've seen people in the live chat go, but John, he's a god. They have never once in all of the MCU suggested that Loki was anything above a mid-tier powerful character in the MCU. Right? They just never have. And to all of a sudden have the power of all creation and the power to literally breathe life into not only our reality, but all realities, was not earned. I'm sorry, but it's true. That was not earned. That was an out of nowhere thing. Now, again, like I expressed earlier, that does not change the fact that for me, it is one of the single best character redemption arcs that the MCU has ever had. The story of Loki is one of the best stories in the MCU, period. And this season of Loki only cemented that. Actually, it brought it to this great conclusion that regardless of whether I felt they earned it and they kind of skipped a lot of steps and they pulled something out of their ass that has never been a part of the MCU, the fact that you have Loki, who is burdened with glorious purpose, seeking his throne, to end up that his glorious purpose is actually a burden, and he's willing to take on that burden of giving up his freedom and giving up his life, really. He's alive, but he's given up his life to stay at the center of all reality and become the god of stories, to keep all the realities alive. That brash, petulant child Loki that we met in Thor 1 to the guy sitting on the throne in the heart of the tree, breathing life into the multiverse to save everyone at his own expense, is one of the best character journeys we've ever seen in the MCU or any comic book. story. DC, MCU, whatever. It's just one of the best. I just wish they had nailed the ending better. That's just my only thing. All right. Thanks for that, Sonar. Okay, next up. Kevin Frazier sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Kevin, for supporting us on that level, man. And Kevin writes, regarding the Marvels, John, they held off on releasing the movie because they were trying to hide the surprise. No, they weren't. That's why you put it laughing heads. That show moment yesterday had me cracking up. All that said, I walked out of the movie smiling from ear to ear, 6.5 out of 10. I don't disagree with that. I mean, I don't give scores to movies. I don't give scores to movies. I haven't done that in many years. But that's for me, that sounds about right. Like, I would be lying if I didn't say I had problems with it, but I also be lying if I didn't tell you I legitimately enjoyed myself for most of the movie. I mean, there's some parts of it I didn't, but for the most part, I walked out entertained. But Marvel needs to do better because we know they can do better because they spent 12 years giving us much better films. And while I enjoyed the Marvels, it's not up to MCU quality still. I really would love to see them get back to that. Anyway, maybe we're just spoiled, Kevin, but I agree with you. If I did give scores on things, which I don't, mine would probably come close to where yours is at too. And again, Kevin, thank you so much for supporting us on that level, man. We really appreciate it. All right. Harris McGrade writes, Max should transition into Paramount Plus if WB buys. No. You don't. If WB buys Paramount, they're not going to transition Max into Paramount Plus. They're going to take Paramount Plus and put it into Max. 100%. I guarantee you that. All right. Schickster writes, was trolling laughs, the Maple Leafs and Oilers post-game show last night. Pandemonium, love it. Go Jets, go. Campea fan in Winnipeg. I love Winnipeg, by the way. And when I used to live in Saskatchewan, a couple of times I took the train. I love taking long country ride train rides. I would take a train back to Toronto and it would always stop over in Winnipeg and at the Forks. And once or twice I even decided to just stay the night and waited for the next train to come. And I would just go on there. And I've spent some time in Winnipeg. Really love that city, man. All right. Next up, Christopher Brickner writes, after watching Loki season 2, I have a lot of confidence in Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead directing Daredevil Born Again. Yeah, but here's the thing. The difference between movies and television, and I don't disagree with you, by the way, just to be clear, but the difference between movie and television, whereas in movies, the number one most important person is the director. That's not the case in television shows. In television shows, the number one most important person is the showrunner. And that's really what's going to determine how good or bad this show is. And the good news is they got the showrunner, the executive producer, I should say, one of the writers and executive producers from the Netflix Punisher series, which I thought was fantastic. So that combination, it gives us something to be hopeful for. It gives us something to be hopeful for, Chris. All right, TJ Perry writes, so pumped you watch Blue Eye Samurai. Agreed, Arcane is a notch above, but still A tier. Can't wait for future seasons. Hashtag Peaches. That's, if you guys have seen Blue Eye Samurai, you know that. That's going to be my thing now. I think whenever I say boobs, I'm probably going to think Peaches. Anyway, yeah, I was really quite surprised by how good Blue Eye Samurai is. And for any of you who don't know anything about it, you're probably like me. You hear the title Blue Eye Samurai, and it sounds like some yucky yuck joke little samurai who's right. It's not. This is a deadly serious show. With terrific narrative. Every episode gives more layer and depth to the background of our main protagonist. It's very violent, but it's a great story, man. It's a great story. People turned me onto it, and now I hope to turn many of you onto it. Go watch Blue Eye Samurai on Netflix. It's really great. All right. Next up, we've got, oh my Josh X12 writes, Loki finale feels like a poetic send-off. Do you think they'll leave it be? John, been a fan of yours for over a decade. Thank you and everyone else involved. Oh, thank you so much for that, man. I appreciate that. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, here's okay. Here's why I think ultimately we will come back to Loki. All right. So the end of Loki season 2 feels like that is the end for Loki, right? Loki now has to just like that movie is garbage. You haven't seen that movie. It doesn't matter. That movie's garbage. Okay, then you're kind of an idiot. Then you're just an idiot and a moron. Anyway, all right. Thank you again, Shamrock, for supporting us on that channel, man, or supporting us on that level. We appreciate that. Karoom Potts writes, so they decided to have a Disney princess moment in the Marvels. Sure, why not? Listen, we're not going to spoil anything. I'll just say this. I hated that sequence. But the conceit of the sequence of the princess angle, that wasn't the problem. And that was perfectly fine. I had no problem with that, but I just didn't like the entire sequence. That was just me. All right, Kevin Cow writes, also sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that, man. And Kevin writes, watch the Marvels. I wish the movie was rearranged differently, starting with Onhala 30 years before instead of being, you know what? I'm not going to address, I'm sorry, Kevin, but I can't address that because to even start to answer your question, I have to go into details on the movie and I just can't do that. Dude, you just supported us with a huge super chat, $20. So thank you so much for that, Kevin. But I can't cover that ground, unfortunately. So let me just thank you for supporting us on that level. But unfortunately, I can't go into that. All right. Andy writes, first half of the Marvels wasn't good, but the second half, the first half of the Marvels wasn't good, but the second half was so bad, especially that planet. It felt almost like it was written by the writers of Riverdale. Again, I agree about that planet. I agree. I hated that. Well, I'm not gonna say I hate it, but I did not like that sequence at all. That being said, man, like let me see if I can bring this up. The audience I watched it with was really having a good time. And actually the reviews, the last I checked, the reviews for the Marvels was 60% critic, 85% audience. It's now gone up even more. The critic score is 61, which again, whatever happened to the days when Marvel movies were getting 85s and 92s and stuff like that. But whatever, it's not bad. 61 is not bad, but it's got an 86% audience rating. The rating for the audiences just keeps going up. Yeah, I mean, but hey, man, listen, all film is subjective. If it didn't work for you, it didn't work for you. But I mean, I've seen much worse MCU movie. I mean, it's better than Man-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I know is not saying much, but I thought there was enough there to enjoy, but that's just me. All right. Buck's Basement writes, John, please tell me that Warner Brothers shareholders have had enough of Zaslav. He's turning them into profit. So I don't think so. After the bad quarterly numbers and now killing more movies, there has to be a line. This is why people who don't understand the business world like you and me are not making the decisions there. In a very short period of time, they've taken Max and made Max actually profitable. The quarterly numbers were expected because of the situation that they're in. And if killing movies is the right thing to do for your company, you got to have the balls to kill the movies. The shareholders right now, as a matter of fact, they're in such good shape right now. They're looking to start acquiring more assets moving forward. Now, you also got to remember their earnings call came out before the end of the actor strike. And they were all hoping that they would have an end to the actor strike before that happened. But I know there are a bunch of people who don't understand anything, and they're all like, oh, guys, listen, the shareholders love David Zaslav. I hate to break it to you, but they do. He's actually got a plan for the company, and you're starting to see that plan working. So, I mean, and I'm sorry, but sometimes killing movies is the right thing to do. It just is. I know people don't like hearing that, but I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you, what I actually think. So there's that. And so no, the shareholders love David Zaslav. That's just the reality. All right. Zeus Fleming writes, are people expecting too much from superhero movies? I still enjoy the movies for what they are, over the top storytelling for the whole family. No, I don't think people are expecting too much. I think you have the right to go into, because you're investing your time and your money when you watch a movie. It is not unreasonable for you to expect excellence. Now, you're not always going to get excellence, and you have to accept that too. So sometimes you got to just, be okay with the fact that you just might get something that's okay or something that's good, right? But you want excellence, right? Marvel, for 12, 13 years, established a reputation and a precedent of putting out excellence. Yes, every once in a while you had an Iron Man 2 or a Thor 2. But for the most part, like 4 out of every 5 Marvel MCU films that would come out were killer. Huge critic numbers, huge audience numbers, huge box office numbers, across the board, right? That's what Marvel did all the time. And so I think to acknowledge the reality of saying, hey, their bar has lowered, that's not having unrealistic expectations. That's just acknowledging the reality of it. The bar has lowered. Again, I love it's great that the Marvels has gone from 52% critic rating to 61%. It's great that it's got an 86% audience score. That's great. That's great. But it doesn't change the reality that this is significantly down from where they used to be as a movie studio. Like I said, only 1 out of their last 5 films, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, only 1 out of their last 5 films is something I would consider great. And what I'm used to from Marvel is 4 out of 5 being great and maybe 1 out of 5 not being great. And so I think, and I don't think that's about me having my expectations too high. I don't think that's the case at all. Marvel has shown they have the capability to make excellent movies, not just good movies, excellent movies. And lately they haven't been, at least not on any consistent basis. But again, it's art, it's all subjective. That's just how I feel. But I don't think the problem is that my expectations are too high. I think the problem is that the overall quality level of their product has come down. So let's see if they can I know they can turn it around because they've done it before. Anyway, thanks for sending that in, Zeus. Okay, next up, DeMarcus Love writes, thanks for setting me straight on reviews. Always respected your opinion. So glad they pushed back. Thunderbolts and Cap might be a good thing. We'll see. I don't remember what you said, DeMarcus, that I said in reply to it, but look, you're right. Maybe it'll end up being a good thing that Thunderbolts got pushed back. Maybe it'll be a good thing that Cap got pushed back, but I am disappointed. I mean, Harrison Ford, from the interview I heard, he had a blast making that movie. And you don't often hear him having a blast making a movie. So I've been really interested to seeing where it goes. Again, Steve Rogers is my Captain America, but I love the Sam Wilson character. So I've been really interested to seeing what they were going to do with this movie. And Thunderbolts, I've been excited for it. So I'm just a little bit bummed out that it got pushed. But you're right. Maybe it'll end up being for the better. All right. Ryan Gregor writes, fun fact, did you know Zawe Ashton from the Marvels and Tom Hiddleston are together as a couple? Yes, I remember we talked about that. God, I think it was about 6 months ago. We were doing an episode of a show and we saw them together and it's like, wait a minute, they're a couple? And I just remember thinking they're a couple? What a cool couple. I mean, I never knew that before, but yes. And they've been together for a while now, actually. All right, next up, Andy writes, 1 of 2. Not surprised by the reviews for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Some talk about how the third act could have been made into another movie. If the third act is like book, then I agree. Again, I have not read the book, but the reviews, the reactions for the new Hunger Games movies are really solid. I don't know if they have a Rotten Tomatoes. Songbirds. It's the Songbirds and Snakes. Yeah, here it is. Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I mean, they're okay. So far the reviews are okay. There are 44 reviews, and right now, well, it's higher than Captain Marvel. It's at 66% right now. So we'll see if that number goes up or down. But I mean, the people I've talked to who have seen the movie, I've talked to 2 or 3 people who have seen the movie, and they really liked it. So right now it's holding a 66. We'll see if that goes up or down. All right. And I've never read the book, unfortunately, Andy. All right, next up, we got I Hit Sastry, who writes, they still can't find a home for the Skrulls after 30 years. All right, I that's whatever. Real estate can be expensive in the whole wide universe, guys. Well, remember, the Skrulls don't just need a house. They need a planet, right? So it can be a little difficult. All right, Andy writes, if I want to watch the movie about Elon Musk, then I'd happily rewatch Glass Onion, which perfectly portrays Musk's level of intelligence. I do not concur with your assessment. However, man, I loved Glass Onion. I just love that you just gave me an excuse to talk about Glass Onion. How good was that movie? I mean, for a while, I thought maybe it was better than Knives Out. I don't know if I believe that anymore because I rewatched Knives Out and I forgot just how good that movie was. But Glass Onion is so good. I had such a good time with that movie. All right. Next up, we got Ronaldo Gallo, who just sends in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you, Ronaldo. Thomas Bombadil writes, what is time if not Loki persevering? Jokes aside, I love the finale, but in some ways, I'm more confused than ever about what a timeline is. Here's the other thing, Thomas Bombadil, that nobody wants to talk about. Normies, I think, may have actually, if normies were watching Loki season 2, and I'm not sure a lot of normies were. By normies, I mean non-hardcore comic book fans. I think normies would have been turned off by Loki. I know nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to say it. But I think it's true. I think normies probably would have been intimidated, alienated, and turned off from Loki season 2. Because, I mean, so much of it is inside baseball and deep cut stuff that I don't know that a lot of quote unquote normies, the people who make the MCU really successful, would have watched that and gone, wow, that was so deep. No, I think probably a lot of normies would have watched it and just gone, I have no idea what's going on. Like, none of this makes sense to me. So, and again, no one's going to want to admit that, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Doesn't take away from how much I appreciated the Loki character journey, but I think a lot of people who are not hardcore into it would have watched that and probably turned it off going, I have no idea what I just saw. I have no idea what any of that meant or what any of that is or how any of that makes sense. I mean, that's, you can love it, but you can acknowledge that that's true. I think that is true. All right. Next up, we got Zeus Fleming, who writes, as a fellow proud Canadian, I ask, who is on your Mount Rushmore of Canadian actors or actresses? I'm not going to spend much time on this because we only got a minute, but I mean, Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling are great. I love the late great Lorne Greene is fabulous and fantastic. Who else would I put up there? I mean, William Shatner obviously is iconic, but I would not call him one of the great actors of all time. I love William Shatner. Don't get me wrong. I've had the privilege of sitting down and interviewing the man. I love him, but I wouldn't necessarily put him up there. I'd have to think about it. I'd have to give some thought to it. All right. Next up, Adam K writes, since James Gunn wrote and produced Coyote versus Acme, I think he was involved. I wouldn't say he was the producer and the writer. I think he was involved. Since James Gunn was the producer and writer of Coyote vs. Acme, do you think its cancellation could sour his relationship with WB? No, not at all. If I were him, I'd be pissed. No, look, first of all, you and I have no idea about all the things that go on behind the scenes. Look, Warner Brothers is clearly very, very precious with its relationship with James Gunn. They made him the co-CEO and head of DC Films. They're entrusting the entire future of the company to him. So they clearly love James Gunn. And I 100% guarantee you that conversations happened with James Gunn. But I don't think James Gunn was the title producer nor the title writer of that movie. 100% guarantee you they would have had a conversation with him. But listen, the Warner Brothers Animation Division has a new head. And James Gunn, if he wants to cancel a project under DC, he needs to have the freedom to do that. And so if the head of another branch of the company wants to cancel a project, James Gunn will acknowledge that they need to have the right to do that. So no.